Christ is in our midst.
He is, ever shall be.
Blessed feast to Elias, little Elias. Well, remind me, we'll sing many years. Okay, so about the prophet Elias and about the prophet Elias and us today. Prophets are not easy people to reconcile ourselves with. Every time we try to compare ourselves with what they say, we always get a little bit cut to the quick, cut to the core. Because the prophets, they don't care what people think. They don't care what people think. We care what people think too much. But they don't consider that at all. And they have no friends, and sometimes they get sawn in half, and sometimes they get beat up and brutalized and murdered, and Elias is no exception. The great, great prophet. The forerunner, in fact, of the forerunner. So Elias spoke the truth. He spoke the will of God, and that's what a prophet does. They speak the will of God. And at sometimes, we're all called to be prophets in our own lives. We have to prophesy, somehow, oftentimes with the help of the church, obviously, and certainly with the help of Christ through prayer. But we have to figure out what the will of God is in our life. We have to figure that out. If we don't do that, we have wasted our time. We have wasted our life. So there's kind of the fundamental reality of prophecy. I have to be enough in the mind of God, enough illumination in my heart to know, to just know this is God's will. This is God's will, I have to do it. And I have to do it. And then it gets a little more complicated when you have a family. When you have a spouse, it's very complicated. If the two of you, like with my wife and I, like whenever, can you imagine this? I would say, it's time for us to move on, to move somewhere, like years ago when we were in Pennsylvania, to move, to go from here to there, to start another mission, to do something. And at that time, to start your first mission. And she would say, well, I'm not feeling it. Where is this prophecy like in my life? And then when she finally did get it, at that time, for sure, there was no question, no obstacle, nothing. Just same thing to come to the Holy Spirit. It takes a real unified vision in a family to know the prophecy, to know the will of God, basically, in your own life. And then it gets even more complicated. Can you imagine like with a parish? What is the will of God in this parish? It's being tested right now. It's being tested. It's always being tested. And you'll see, like when, I always love the question, whatever happened to so-and-so? Well, their vision, didn't dovetail with the parish's vision. They went like that, right? So to discern the will of God for a people, for a whole people, not just a parish, but like a whole church even. The church is being challenged. The big C church, the whole Orthodox church in the whole world is being really challenged these days in terms of what is the will of God. Obviously, the will of God always is to be faithful, to be true to Christ, and to love in the midst of that truth. That's hard. I know a lot of people who really have the truth, but they have no love. Then I know a lot of people who have love, beautiful, holy love, no truth. How can you have one without the other, right? They have to come together. They have to somehow meet in that holy place, which is the heart of Christ. The prophets have a way of firing right directly at us what we need to hear. Yeah, exactly. But, when they're doing that, they have this depth of love. They really do. Even though you wouldn't, they're wilderness people. They're wild people in some way. But they are so steeped in the truth and in the love of Christ, that nothing touches them. You can do a million things. You can say a million things. You can send all of, Jezebel can send all of her like priests and to try to undo his work and to try to make him look like a fool, and nothing stands in the way if you know that the love of Christ is in you and the truth is in you. And hopefully, we have some of that conquered because we're Orthodox Christians already. We have seen the true light. We have found the true faith. Don't we say that? Didn't we just say that? But that's not a cliche. We are worshiping the undivided Trinity who has saved us. So there's some semblance of truth. And maybe where we're lacking is the other part. Do I love Christ? Do I love His truth? Do I love the other people in the church? Do I love the people outside of the church? These are like all big tests of where our, how effective our own prophetic abilities are going to be. How we live all of these virtues somehow, right? And that's not easy. And it's good for you to grapple with that. So you have to discern for us. And I told these ladies, I said, are you comfortable singing together? Are you comfortable singing? And not everybody is. Believe me, I heard from somebody in the parish already, more than one actually, about we're not being safe enough. We're not being careful enough. What are you doing? So, now how do I reconcile that with that? How can I be like a prophet to know how do you put all this together? And the only way the only solution that we come up with is love. I have to love that one who's saying that. And I have to love that one who's saying that too. How do you love them all, That's like children. Have you ever had children who are fighting over one thing and only one of them could get the one thing? You have to be Solomon to figure that out. This is the power of the prophetic life in the church. And it translates into other areas, the pastoral life, like the priestly life, we can do it sacramentally somehow. There's a lot of factors, there's a lot of ways that prophetic life develops for us. But the bottom line is, in each case, in each situation, with each person, with each group, we have to practice love in truth, right? We have to be in touch with God. How do we say that better? We have to know the will of God. We have to say, no, this is the will of God. I know it. I know it. And God gives you, if you're the father or mother of a family, He gives you that blessing to do that for your children. And He gives, unfortunately, it's the likes of me that has to, He gives the priest that blessing to know. Because nobody knows everybody like the priest does, like the pastor does. Nobody knows. And to be able to discern the will of God, even though this is absolutely true, in this case, we can't do it. We have to do this instead. Retirement is a very great blessing. But the prophets never retired. They were strong to the end until they got murdered and all that. Okay, well, all of that's coming too. When Elijah, right, or any of the prophets, think of Jonah. Jonah, that one fought against God. He did not want to be a prophet of all the prophets. Moses, of course, but Jonah, he did not want to. He said, no! And he ran. He fled away from his assignment. We don't have a blessing to do that. And the Lord had a lot of mercy on him and brought him back, right? And asked him hard questions, You love people hey, prophet, do you love people more than I do? God says. So, in your life, practice getting in touch with God so that no matter what comes up, you're at peace and you know what to do. Because a lot of you are not. A lot of you are, I can say in a minute, that there's fear, there's anger, there's a lot of things going on in the community. And the enemy does not like unity and love and care for each other. He likes when we talk about each other. Hey, how come that one is doing this? How come that one is doing that? It's kind of stupid, right? So No living by fear and no living by anger or judgment. Right? I said it at the beginning. I said it a million times. I'll say it again. If somebody in this church is very much afraid to come to church and they will have to wear a mask and everything like that, love them. Love them. We have people that are like that are afraid and they see things and then they say, well, I can't come to church, Father. Love them. You know, maybe they're wrong. Maybe there's no science or whatever. You know, that's the big catchphrase to it. There's no science behind what they're saying. So what? Do you love them or don't you? Love them. And if the ones, what's the opposite? Because I was talking to a priest just yesterday whose parish is really like at war. I mean at war. Because most of the people want everybody to wear a mask. They're at war. They're fighting. So if you have the opposite like that, right? And the one who's not wearing a mask, love them. Love them. You know, like, we're never going to get through to each other with words and with ideas. That's for the world. That's politics. We try to convince each other of our position somehow. Well, good luck with that. You might score points and lose a brother or a sister. You might lose them forever and never see them again. And God knows we've had enough of that in our lives, right? Every so often, you have to make a stand. I understand. Every so often, you have to just say, the truth is this, and I love you, and it's really done. Here's the test. It's really done in love. I really love this person, but I cannot, whatever, compromise. That comes sometimes. But most of the time, you can solve the problem if you have a little bit of love. And not, my idea first and then my love second. No. This is not our way. It's not our way. Even the prophets, when they spoke strongly, right, they did it because they loved not only the will of God, but they loved the people to whom they were delivering the will of God. What good is knowing the will of God if I have no love in my heart? If I can't share it so that a person's going to receive it and not recoil, turn their back and run the other way? What good is that? I know the will of God, but I'm all alone. I am the only true one. Worthless. Worthless. So, let's study a little bit. Maybe you never even read all the chapters, all the episodes in the life of Elias. It's a very beautiful story. And Elijah deeply cared for the people of God, for the Israelites. He deeply cared for them. He didn't just fire things at them. He embraced them with his words, with his strong admonitions. He didn't want to see them die, right? And he pled with tears. So that takes a lot of purging. My heart has to be, on fire and burning with love at the same time. So how about this? How about this for a final word on the feast day of little Elias here? Don't say any word to anybody until you are a saint. How's that? No prophecies to anybody. You shouldn't be doing this, or we shouldn't be doing this, or that. Shh. Until I'm holy. Until I have nothing keeping me from the love of Christ, or from the vision of God. I'm totally illumined. How's that? Well, a very quiet parish for a while, I hope. And we must, and I have to say something like this every once in a while, because it's easy to slip. It's very easy to just, with the flicker of a thought, to go into some other place of judgment, right? Or some other place of fear. So, be careful, be still, have stillness inside, love Christ. These other things will work themselves out. And God knows what He's doing, And He knows who needs to get sick. Pray for my daughter Natalia. It looks like she's sick. She's really sick. So she went to work the other day, and they take, she works at a restaurant. They take the temperatures when you go in, and she was burning up with a fever. They had to get an Uber to send her home and all this. And body aches and headaches and throat aches, and she's just she's like, Dad, I feel I said, let's do a taste test. I gave her a taste test. I said, what do you have in the house? Blueberries. She couldn't taste them. I said, what else? Yogurt. I said, whip it up with a lot of sugar. Fill it with sugar. And taste it. I can't taste anything. I said, well, you're sick. You're sick, so just stay home and pray. Just pray. Don't get scared. Don't be... Maybe they'll take you for a test. So it's not a fake thing. I mean, this stuff's happening in Italy. Well, she's a young person, but still, they can get sick too. But God knows who needs to get sick, right? To teach all those around them too. Like, hey, no judgmentalism on the one hand, but no fear on the other. I hope, like in her case, that it makes her like, what's the word, like courageous. Courageous in the face of sickness. Because, all of us are going to face something in the future. We're going to face some strong enemy, some strong attack, even if it's from inside of our bodies. So what? Right? I would hope that from the onset of this virus until now, we've learned a thing or two. We've learned about the spiritual lesson about this. Like, we've learned that, there's a physical dimension to everything. But there's also a spiritual dimension to everything, right? And sometimes we have to weigh those two out together, balance them, blend them, and then maybe I'll get sick, or maybe I need to, in this case, not get sick. That's not the most important thing, getting sick or not getting sick, dying or not dying. What? That's not the most important thing, though? No. If you've listened 1,000,000 times to what the teachings of the church are, this life is racing to its conclusion. Thank God. You're not supposed to force it or like artificially choose it. No suicide, nothing like that. But at the same time, we shouldn't fear it either. We despise it. Remember the word despise? We despise death. It's not normal. It's not natural. But we don't fear it. Okay? That can't be the number one motivator. So I would hope that, the people who are sick now, and I know a few of them actually now, that they can overcome that fear. Like it teaches us like strength, some courage. And most importantly, it teaches us really the love of Christ. Like if I haven't loved Christ before, like now I have to like grab him. And if I haven't loved other people, I need to grab, like to say, I'm sorry, forgive me. I want to be at peace with everybody. It's the way we should live all the time. And then, when the time comes, you won't have to like scramble at the end when you're sick. Thank God for the prophets. They give us like that. Straight as an arrow truth. But they never neglect the love of God. We do everything because of the love of God. Now then, since we have a strong young man who's taken his patron as this prophet, Elias, we're going to wish him a many blessed years today on this feast day. And then I have a little gift for you. Grant the Lord a prosperous and peaceful life, health, salvation, and furtherance in all the things, unto thy servant Elias, celebrating his feast on this day, together with Deacon Elijah and all those whom we are remembering, and protect and preserve him, O Master, for many